Hey, what's up guys, Eric here. So you have your first wedding booked, you have all your equipment, but you're trying to figure out how to film a ceremony. Well, that's what we're gonna cover. So like always, every situation is going to be different. You could be in a small venue that just made their side room, a ceremony room. You could be in an enormous church. You could also be outside. You never know, but the basic principles of what we're going to talk about today should be able to be used across the board. So the typical setup is actually set up very similar to a church, and we're going to be trying to draw on the iPad today for this. So obviously you're going to have the altar at the front of the room. This is where the bride and the groom are going to stand. Then you typically have pews, chairs, or whatever on two sides of the room. Sometimes you will break up, maybe one family will be on one side, one family on the other. I mean, it doesn't matter to you, but you never know. The important thing to make note here is there is an aisle between each section of the chairs. This is where the bride is going to walk through up into the groom. Many times the groom is already there waiting for the bride to come down the aisle. But something to make note though is the bride is not the only one that walks down the aisle, it's the entire bridal party. So besides having the groom potentially here, and then the bride, when she does come, will be on the left side or right side, whatever. You will find that the bridal parties, the groomsmen and the bridesmaids, are going to be on either side right next to the bride and the groom. So the big question is, with all that said, where do you set up your camera? So it should be noted that you're going to want to use multiple cameras. Typically, I'll have first a camera all the way in the back. This is going to capture a wide shot of everything going on. So that's going to go probably right back here. Now you're going to want to make sure that this camera is as high as it can go on the tripod, because when the bride starts walking down the aisle, everyone's going to stand up and you don't want your camera to be blocked. Also, something to note is this wide camera in the back is probably not going to be monitored by a videographer. Yeah, I want this as an establishing shot. Yes, it is an important shot, but I can't stand behind this camera the entire time because this is not the only shot I'm gonna wanna get. And that is because I am going to try to be over here, all the way in the front, capturing people as they walk down the aisle. And then once the bride does come through the aisle and then is standing right next to the groom, like a little square there, I am going to then start walking away from the couple and probably set up maybe at the end over here or maybe somewhere in the middle facing down the aisle so that I can get a nice zoom lens and capture them nice and close up. Now obviously what I'm talking about right now is just a very simple 2-camera shoot, but sometimes you might want to have some extra cameras, especially if you have them available. And if you have another videographer with you, what I recommend you do is actually have a camera either on the left or right side. This camera is going to be subjected to people getting in the way, but once people do sit down, you should be able to get a decent shot of the couple at an angle. Now in a perfect world, if you could have 2 cameras on both sides, that would be fantastic, but you might not have that ability to do so. Regardless, whether this is a 2-camera or a 3-camera setup, something to make note of is the camera in the back, stationary. If you have a camera on the side or both sides, there's a good chance those are going to be stationary as well. But your camera, the main shooter, should be prepared to be mobile. So, I'm gonna set up here in the front while people come down the aisle, but then like I said, I'm gonna potentially move to the middle of the aisle if it's appropriate, or I might have to, depending on the setup and whatnot, I might have to go to one of the sides. You never know. So being mobile is very important. I usually always shoot the ceremony myself with the Zion Crane, walking around with my camera, and then I'm relying on these other cameras in the room to hopefully capture some nice close-up shots. Now though, what about audio? So typically in a church, there really isn't a PA system that they're going to be using. If there are a microphone and speakers, try to use like a Zoom H4n or whatever to get a audio feed out from the board. But I find the most practical microphone to use actually is a lavalier microphone on the groom, so that you have really close audio when they're stating their vows. Now, I know some people do also mic up the bride, and if you want to do that, by all means, but I find a lot of the time that's a little bit more of a challenge than not. So I will usually just mic up the groom. But guys, that is the basics of shooting a ceremony. I usually shoot with 3 cameras minimum. I try to go with 4 if I have that available, but I've also done ceremonies with only 2 cameras. I recommend as many as you can, but you utilize what you have. Anyway guys, that is the video. Stay tuned. I'm gonna be trying to make some on-site videos in regards to setting up for a ceremony in the future. Anyway guys, though, I will catch you in the next one when I guess we're gonna be covering editing a ceremony.